Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great edition of the Bailey Pod. We had some great games last week in the second round. Two Nick 10 teams, both Belvidere North and Harlem. Unfortunately, Harlem bows out in the second round, and the Belvidere North Blue Thunder roll into the the third round of their second straight trip to the IHSA playoffs in round 3. They'll take on Illinois powerhouse Cary-Grove. Tonight, also, we'll discuss how both Harlem and Belvidere North performed last week. And stopping by today, Belvidere North head coach Jeff Beck will join us to discuss their big showdown against powerhouse Cary-Grove. Before we get into the show, folks, the heart of the show, that is, folks, this evening, I'm going to let you all real quick pull up that seat, pause what you're doing, because we got a great one percolating tonight that you do not want to miss, folks. The Bailey Pod is in the building. Let's get ready to go, folks, for the Bailey Pod. Hey, folks, welcome to another great edition here on the Bailey Pod on this evening, Thursday evening. Hope everybody's doing well. Before we get into the heart of the show, I do this every week when we bring you the show here on the Bailey Pod. I pause for a second and express my thanks, profuse thanks, that is, to those viewers, those followers, those people who have subscribed, go on and watch the Bailey Pod. It's definitely greatly appreciated. We're going to keep bringing it to you each and every week. This is our third show for our playoff edition, so hopefully you like the first two, because this one tonight is going to be hot as well. Also, too, make sure you guys go follow, go like, subscribe. Make sure you guys also to click that button, bottom right-hand corner, so you can be notified for any new content that we'll be dropping throughout the week. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to go ahead and just get right into the show. I'm going to bring in my guest tonight, Harold Bone, Rockton Roscoe News is with me. Harold, what's happening, my man?
Tim, another great day, another great conversation we're going to have with Coach Beck. I'm very excited. He's one of the great coaches that we have in the Nick 10, and at this point, he's holding the banner for the conference, right? I mean,
he is. He's holding it down, man. He's holding it down.
He is. Yeah, him and the Blue Thunder. Great game last week. They battled. We'll talk about that with him and talk about that in the show. But another great week, high school football. It's like the holidays are already here. I know we got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up, but if you're a football fan, holidays are upon us already.
Yep, and I'm looking forward to it, my man. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Harold, I know last week there were a couple really great games last week, and one in particular I want to start with before we bring our guest in this evening. Is Harlem. Harlem traveled to Central. Obviously they ended up losing this game 24-14. Both of us had an opportunity to get our naked eye on watching this game. What were some of your thoughts on this game as Harlem came up short?
The field conditions really did not help them at all. I actually think it hampered them a little bit because they like to get the ball out in space a little more. When they did, some of their players couldn't use their athletic ability, I think, against Central, whereas Central was more of a ram it down your throat, straight at you. They're gonna do what you think they're gonna do. They're not gonna change things up. They didn't change things up prior to the game. When they were playing in the game, that's exactly what they did. Their interior offensive and defensive lines, I think, controlled a lot of the action, really shut down those short runs, which a lot of times helps the outside of the Harlem offense. So that was the big thing there. Defensively, Harlem did enough to win, but offensively, they just couldn't get things going. Fawcett had a nice game, but not a great game. Bad weather. Struggled a little bit when it came down to that. You can see it from the pictures here. Wet, cold field against a good, solid football team in Central. And, Harlem let up a couple of big plays that got him behind the score and just couldn't make enough plays to get back in the game. I know they made a valiant effort late in that football game, but it just wasn't enough as Central got a great run late in that football game from their quarterback to set them up for an easy score that essentially capped the game for them. But still, we have to give all the credit in the world to Harlem. Fantastic season. Those players, we're not going to pick who's going to win the conference next year because we got to get through this season first and hopefully walk along the trail with Belvidere North. But I got to think Harlem's got to be up there. They got so many young players coming back. But
I would agree. I would definitely agree with you. I think the inclement weather played a role for both teams. As I sat there and watched the game, I mean, the field was just none of the backs really had their footing like they probably had weeks prior when they were in the regular season and the playoff game last week. But you can't one thing we can't make an excuse for what the weather brought. A W is a W, a loss is a loss. I thought Harlem played well. A couple things that I noticed. The game, there were a lot of missed tackles. I don't know if that had to do a lot with the inclement weather that they were experiencing, trying to go for a tackle, you slip off a guy, but, again, you have to be in the game of football, which is a game that's played outdoors. I think you have to be ready for any type of inclement weather that's going to be thrown at you, particularly this time of the year during the month of November.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. They did some missed tackles along the way. They didn't bring their feet. They did a lot of arm tackling, things like that. That's not weather related. That's just not getting in the right positions you need to make the play. I mean, that's kind of I think any coach, especially on that staff, would probably talk about that fact. I do think the weather did play a little bit into Central's hands, though, as they didn't throw the ball as much as I thought they would. They really stayed on the ground the majority of that football game. And I know they do like to sprinkle in the pass a little bit. We'll have to see as they move forward if they get through this week, down at state, what happens there. But, the tackling was, a difficult situation.
Yep.
Harlem didn't do it well enough when they needed to make the stops they needed to get the ball back to their offense and set them up in short fields. Because Harlem had to drive the length of the field a number of times. Their two scores, their 14 points were, I believe, I might be correct. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this. I think both drives were over 70 yards. And in that weather, that temperature, those conditions, that's tough. That's tough to go up and down the field like that. Especially the way Harlem likes to play offense. So it's just one of those, it's one of those games that happens during the playoffs. You hope you can kind of play through it. Harlem wasn't able to. Central took the opportunities that they had there in front of them. And look, Central's a good team. They're a good program. They are a very good program.
I would agree. And you look at, again, you go back and you look at the tape and you say, okay, who did what better? I would have to say in terms of execution, offensive execution, I think you got to give the nod to Central. I thought they held onto the ball well, even though Harlem had some tackles for losses. I believe they had 6. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yep. They had 6 in the ball game. Yep.
And just watching the game and seeing how Central, irrespective of the actual inclement weather, they were able to really move the ball pretty efficiently. Despite the weather. And you look at Harlem's offense and you look and see what they did offensively. I thought they did a good job offensively. I think that, what hindered them the most, I think you didn't have, Broom and Foster. Again, part of this is due to the footing. They just didn't have good footing. They couldn't cut really on the dime as we're accustomed to seeing those two backs, run each and every week as they did in the Nick 10, So, we can sit here and say that, the inclement weather, played a factor, but, both teams had to go out and play on Saturday. So, we're not making an excuse, as to why Harlem lost, but, I would have to honestly say, I think the weather actually inhibited Harlem from actually doing what they've been doing all year. That's put the ball in the air efficiently and putting together a really great dominant running game as we've seen for like the last 8-9 weeks.
Well, yeah, Tim, and we've talked about this with Drew Collins and many other guests. Jackson Cook, when he gets a ball in his hands, he's an explosive, dynamic athlete who can bring the ball back on any team in the state of Illinois. In that game, I think Central did a really good job when they had to kick it to Harlem, keeping the ball away. The ball was on the ground. They covered the punts really well. The kickoffs they did pretty well as well. Cook didn't get the ball in his hands. From a secondary perspective, we kind of knew that that's probably what Central was going to do. So, you take one of your weapons away like that, who may be the most dynamic kid in the Nick 10. I mean, if he's not, he's sure up there. And I'm sure Coach Beck would mention that as well, and Coach Morrow. It's just one of those things that they just couldn't seem to get over that hump. Every time that they had a negative play defensively, Central was able to answer that and get like an 8 or 9 yard run or play to get them into 3rd and short. And that's got to wear on you as a player, over and over and over. Hey, you make a great play on 1st down or 2nd down, but the next play, the team bounces right back. So credit goes to Central there. You can see from these pictures, I mean, the field, it was wet, it was cold.
Yeah.
But Central played in it. They kept their feet.
Right. Yeah. And again, Harold, I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, but again, like I just alluded to earlier, we know this game is played outdoors, and we know every day it's not going to be a sunny day. And I think both of these teams prepared, that week leading up to the game. I think they prepared, to play, a really good game. And again, we saw a really good game, but again, due to the inclement weather, I think both teams were actually inhibited from actually probably running what they would normally run offensively. Again, you alluded to earlier, you mentioned that, Burlington didn't pass the ball a lot. Obviously, well, we know why, due to the inclement weather. So, again, we know Harlem was a passing team this year. They didn't pass a whole lot. Well, why is that? Well, we know due to the inclement weather. So again, you look at what both teams weren't able to do. Somebody still had to win. Somebody still had to lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tim, I heard this somewhere on the internet. It's one of the sites that I follow. Do you think that the fact it was on natural grass, do you think that hurt Harlem in this case? Because so many teams now in the Nick 10 play on turf and not grass. Do you think that hurt them at all in that? I push back on that because I don't think it really matters all that much, especially once you get to this level of the playoffs.
Right. To answer your question, I don't think it hurt them. I don't think it helped them. I think, again, you irregardless if you play in a conference that's got, 80% of the teams or 90% of the teams in the conference have turf, you still have to be able to play on a grass field. Grass came before turf. You see what I'm saying? Grass fields came before turf. So it's not like that these kids had never seen a grass field before, so I think it may have played a role, but I think the role may have been minimal. I don't think it was a lot that played a role, because again, if you look at Harlem and what they were able to do, they did some good things on the ground. Did I see a lot of tiptoeing from the backs to where they usually, I'm used to seeing Foster and Broom put their foot in the ground and get up and go, 0 to 90 in 0.5 seconds. We didn't see that. Again, what played a role in that? Well, the weather played a role in that. Mm-hmm. It actually slowed them down.
Yeah, I know. So, Tim, this is just a me thing, but and my wife and son could tell you this. Whenever I watch a football game that has inclement weather, I yell at the TV because these kids do not put screw-in cleats. They're all molded. Almost every cleat now is molded, and I think that is something that really has the footwork, especially for the elite athletes on the outside. Of which I have no idea anything about that. I'm a big slug in the middle of the field. I do think it has to play some part in it. If you don't feel your footing is, as confident as it normally is. I'm not saying it had a lot to do with the outcome of that game, but if you're making a hard cut and you step on the outside of your foot and you're trying to go upfield and you feel like you're slipping, you are going to tiptoe. You are going to do some things. Maybe instead of cutting outside, maybe you cut it inside, and then the linebackers and the D linemen that are flowing over, they can make the play. Whereas if you go outside your offensive lineman, maybe you get to the edge, you can beat, then you only have to beat a corner, maybe outrun the safety. So those things do occur in this football game with Burlington. I don't know that any of that mattered. Burlington was just a better team on Saturday. And they just beat Harlem. And
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And again, if you go back, if anybody goes back and watch that game, particularly the fans that made it out to that game, you look at the game and you say, okay, what did Harlem do wrong? And other than the weather, I mean, you really can't say a whole lot. And again, I think the weather really pretty much encumbered them from actually being that Harlem offense that we've been accustomed to see week in and week out. And then also to Burlington, as I alluded to earlier, they both played on the same field. Again, did the better team win? I think in my eyes, I think Harlem was the better team. I don't really think the better team won. And I know sometimes, that happens. And I know people out there listening, well, Burlington won, but viewers, there is a such thing as that just because a team wins doesn't mean that they're the better team. They were just a better team that day. They did things better than Harlem did that day. I don't really necessarily think that they had the playmakers, the makeup of playmakers as Harlem did. I think you would agree with me, Harold, on that.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think they had the speed, that Harlem has, that we've been accustomed to seeing week out in the Nick 10. And again, you look at what they weren't able to do defensively. I did see a lot of guys, missing tackles. I saw a few times a lot of guys, there was one of their linemen, made the initial contact, and then he just let the running back just go by him. Didn't really make an effort to go after and tackle the actual running back. So, there were some miscues there, on Harlem's end on the defensive side of the ball. Guys weren't wrapping up, coming up and making stops when needed, and Central just took advantage of it.
Yep. And I think this is another game that I think Harlem and the coaching staff and the players are going to learn from, just like they learned from last year's game. They're going to improve. They're going to look at the film. They're going to say, okay, what do we need to do differently next year to take the next step or the next two steps? And I would be surprised. I would actually be shocked if some of those kids and that coaching staff for Harlem don't watch the Belvidere North game that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit and see what North does to get to this level. They understand what they have to do. We were both at that game on Friday night. We'll talk about it. And I think that's just something that they have to learn from. And if you've not been in that position, and year to year, every team is a little bit different, but historically Harlem hasn't been in that position for quite a while. And I'm not sure if anybody on that staff has been in that position to actually teach and talk to the kids. Like, it's something you sometimes have to go through and learn. It's like, a long time in the NBA, you had to lose before you were able to win, right? So the Bulls got knocked out by Detroit a couple of years in a row, and then they won, and then they won 6 in a row, and then they got knocked out by Orlando, and Orlando got.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think what Harlem's going to do. I think I don't think this is the last that we've heard of Harlem. I think they're going to go on and really do some good things, probably for the next couple of years. And they have a lot of younger guys that are, coming back. Fawcett's coming back at quarterback. So I think Harlem's going to be okay. I think, this experience that they had, Harold, I think that's where you were trying to actually get to. Their experience now. Okay, you won round one. You lost round two. That experience of playing 2 games, particularly for the younger guys. The sophomores that they brought up. The juniors. From this past season, that was a huge experience for them that, if they wouldn't have been the Harlem team that they were this year, they wouldn't have been able to experience that. So again, looking forward, looking at 2026, and you say to yourself, okay, well, how good is Harlem going to be? In my estimation, I think they're going to be in the top 4. I definitely think they're going to be in the top 4. It remains to be seen, but in my estimation, I think they're going to be in the top 4. They bring a lot of guys back. Fawcett's had a chance to really, he grew this year. He had an opportunity to grow. He got 2 playoff games underneath his belt, which is huge for a kid of his caliber. But it's, I think what's going to determine their success in 2026 is it's going to be predicated on their offseason. How well of an offseason will Harlem have?
Yep, the amount of effort they put in on the offensive and defensive line, I think, is going to be, a big kind of driver as to how they're going to finish in the Nick 10 and how far they go in the playoffs for sure. This offseason is important for them. They have, some special pieces and some special places there at quarterback. Obviously corner, running back, wide receiver. They have talented young kids that they'll be able to kind of continue to push forward. I did want to give a special shout out because as I was watching the game, so I didn't go to the game. As I was watching the game, they showed the Harlem crowd a number of times. What a great turnout for the Huskies. That was a great turnout by those fans. They traveled all the way over there. They supported their team in less than great conditions. So all the parents, all the fans, grandparents, brothers, sisters, girlfriends, everything. Kudos to you guys and tip of the hat to you because that was a tremendous job by you guys going over there, supporting your team, and they were loud at points in that game from the broadcast.
Harold, I'm actually highlighting the stat here as we see on our screen. Harlem had 255 yards of total offense. Fawcett was 7-11. I think, again, not blaming the weather. Again, I think when you get into playoffs and you have a quarterback that's got a decent arm that can put the ball in the air and you have receivers such as a Cook, you can throw the broom out of the backfield. You can actually line Foster up in the slot. You can do a lot of things with the weaponry that you have. So I'm looking at this stat, Fawcett 7-11. Again, he probably should have thrown the ball at least 17 to 18 times. I think he should have had that many attempts. Again, inclement weather, the footing, of the field was bad. He lines up in the shotgun. He never really drops back. He never really lines up underneath the center. But again, as I'm gazing and looking down at this stat, I'm saying to myself, okay, 255 total offense. He was 7-11. I believe he had over 100 yards passing. Mm-hmm. But again, I think they needed more from him. It's not his fault that he didn't throw the ball 18 or 20 times, but I think that would have given Harlem a better chance to actually win this game if he would have had more attempts. Now, he's got to complete them, but I'm just saying opportunities. I think he needed more for Harlem to actually win this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, not knowing what their kind of game plan was and all that information there. I know time of possession wise, I believe Central held like a 2/3 to 1/3 advantage, something like that. I remember seeing that coming across that stat, and I didn't share that with you, and I apologize for that. But Harlem, they should have thrown the ball more, been maybe a little more aggressive. I felt like at points in that game, maybe they were not as aggressive as they normally were. Now, I don't know why that would be the case. Coach Morrow and his staff are the only ones that could tell you that.
Right, absolutely.
But I thought Fawcett actually played really well for this game.
Yeah, he did. But what I'm actually alluding to is that I'm looking at their 255 of total offense. He was 7-11. I think he had a little over 100 yards receiving. I'm saying in order for them to be able to beat a good team, if they were to beat a good team such as Central, I think they needed a little bit more of total offense, and they needed a better performance, out of Fawcett. Did he have a bad performance? No, I'm not stating that. But what I'm saying is that, due to the inclement weather, I think that's why we're looking at these types of attempts, 7-11. He only put the ball in the air 11 times, 255 of total offense. Some people look at this, total offense and be like, oh, that's a average night. Well, it's not good enough once you get into the IHSA playoffs is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And playing a damn good football team as they saw in Central on Saturday.
Yeah.
Night.
This Central team was much different than the opening game against Mather. I'll say that. Very, very different. And I don't think the first round game had anything to do with the second round game, but yeah, they needed to probably get another, 50, 60 yards of offense to put some more pressure on Central so that maybe they had to go outside their comfort zone a little because they seemed extremely comfortable in the majority of that game. They ran the football. It didn't matter if it was 1st and 10 or 2nd and 15 or 2nd and 17. I mean, they were running the football. They were fine. Even when, as we talked about, the 6 tackles for losses happened, they continued to run the football. And if more pressure or more threat of a long pass play could have taken place. Maybe that changes some things in the outcome of the game. I don't know. That's hard. It's really hard to say because, things you can't say it's not a 1-to-1. So if let's say you pass it 17 or 18 times, that's going to lead to another 150 yards of offense and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
I mean, that's a hard thing. I understand where you're going with that, but I think Central had all the answers on Friday night.
Again, Harold, as I alluded to earlier, what Central did, you go back and watch the film, they capitalize on their opportunities. They capitalize on their opportunity. Every time they got the ball offensively, it wasn't always 3 and out. They capitalized on their opportunities. They had big plays. Harlem had big plays as well. But, Central made big plays when they needed to make big plays.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think with that and with Fawcett playing and maturity and his training in the offseason, Tim, you're obviously the foremost trainer in Rockford. Him developing his other skills. He seems to be able to throw the ball really well, but maybe moving around in the pocket, working on his athletic ability just to move to the left, move to the right, create a few more throwing angles or throwing opportunities is something he can work on. And I'd expect him to kind of do that. I know he's a fantastic baseball player as well there at Harlem. But I think we're going to see a different style quarterback next year when he comes back, because remember Coach Morrow talked to us about this early in the year that he didn't know who the quarterback was going to be. Even after the first couple of games, they didn't know if it was going to remain Fawcett or if they were going to go to somebody else. Fawcett stepped up, had a fantastic year. He had over 20 touchdowns. I think he only had 1 interception. So just a fantastic season for the young sophomore. And Harlem's got so much talent coming back next year. And then their JV team is solid. They're freshmen if they bring any of those kids up. I also think this helps Coach Morrow and the entire Harlem football program to get more kids excited about being a part of the football program. Winning, it creates excitement, gets kids wanting to be there. We talked to Coach Cos about that over at Jefferson, the same idea. It sucks to lose, surely does, but fantastic year for Harlem. They
have, Harold, just take it a step further. Harlem has nothing to lament about, with this 2025 season. I thought they played exceptionally well. They came up big when they needed to come up big, during the Nick 10 conference games. I don't think a lot of people expected Harlem to be as good as they were. They got some key pieces leaving due to graduation. Some guys, they're going to miss Broom next year. Hopefully they can fill that void. That's a tough void to fill. He's going to be graduating this year. They got some D linemen and some O linemen that'll be actually graduating this year. Also, too, they do have some young offensive linemen, as Coach Morrow alluded to back on the show a few weeks back when he was on. So Harlem's in a good place. I think they are. It's good to see Coach Morrow back in his second season. Upon his return, coming back as head coach over to Harlem. So, again, I think he's excited, for the future of the actual, for the actual Husky land, so to speak. I think he's surrounding himself with some really, really great coaches, and I think he's going to continue to do that. That's just what winners do, surround themselves around really good people. But I think, Harlem's going to be a team that we're going to be talking about, probably for the next 2 to 3, 4 years. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I know the Husky Nation, the folks that I talk to that are around the program, they are very excited about what's coming in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. They love the young kids that are coming up, the volume of kids, the number of kids that are going to get into the program. They're excited to have Coach Moore back leading the troops, as they say. I think good times are going to be had by Harlem for a number of years ahead. And the Nick 10 foes, watch out, because they're coming. They're already at near the top of the conference, but they're gonna come for that conference championship. Yeah.
And as I alluded to earlier, Harold, I mean, just the experience that those kids, those underclassmen got this year, being able to play in 2 playoff games. Yeah, you won your first one. You go to your second one, you travel for your second one. Irrespective of the inclement weather, you came out, with a loss. You lost that game 24-14, but you lost to a damn good football team. So again, Harlem has nothing to lament about. I think, right now, heal up, let your body repair and, start to get ready for the offseason because again, all eyes are going to be on you. You got a target on your back. I think going forward, I think Harlem's going to be that team to beat. So, you just got to be prepared and hopefully they prepare, smart and they prepare properly, as they get ready for 2026.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if they're not prepared and ready to go for 2026. They're led. They have a whole bunch of leaders in the program, but Jackson Cook's one of their main leaders there. And I see recently he took a visit to the University of Minnesota. I believe it's North Dakota State as well. He's going to take a visit. Illinois had some conversations with him. So high level talent, high level kid there. Great character, great leader. Coach Morrow talked about it. Anyone around the Husky program, I'll mention it to you as well. Jackson's a great kid. Works hard, and he's going to bring his teammates along with him along the way.
And one thing I'm big on, Harold, is what I look at, in any sport, it's particularly these guys that are coming back. My big question is, what are you going to add to your game? One, how better are you going to be next year compared to the prior year? I think that needs to be the focus with these kids moving on. Particularly these guys that are going to be juniors next year, guys that are going to be seniors, how different are you going to be in 2026 compared to 2025? Because if you come out, if you come out and you perform like you did in 2025 and 2026, then, in my eyes, I would consider that a subpar performance, a subpar performance in my eyes, so, again, I think those kids are smart over there. I think they're getting quality coaching. Coach Morrow has one of the best staffs probably in this area, bar none. So I think those kids are going to prepare properly. But again, what will they add to their games? That X factor, what will they add to their games to where guys like you, guys like me, Scott Leber, Drew, when we come on these podcasts, we're saying something totally different that we didn't say last year about these kids adding a step. How much faster did they get? How much bigger did they get? Did they put on the right size? How much stronger did they get? How powerful did they get compared to last year? So, those are some of the actual pillars that I'm going to be looking at, in 2026 of these guys that are returning. Cook, Fawcett, McClellan. We can't forget about him. He's back. He's only a junior this year, so he's back. So it's going to be interesting to see the growth of these kids in 2026 compared to what we saw or what we witnessed in 2025.
Yeah, the valuable lessons that I think the Harlem Huskies can take from Coach Morrow is he's been around the game long enough, and that coaching staff is good enough to know and evaluate themselves to understand that where they need to grow and where they need to go. So if it's a self-evaluation as a player, if it's the coaches sitting down with you at the end of the season and talking to each individual player on like, hey, here's where you were in 2025. Here's where you were, where we want you to grow in 2026. And then you can see, because some of these guys they want to play at the next level. They want to play at the collegiate level at whatever level of football, NAIA Division 3, 2, and 1. And Muhammad, who's playing over at Winona State and having a fantastic freshman season over there, that hopefully he comes back around and talk to them about, the work that needs to get put in to get better. Harlem is
speaking of Muhammad, he's ripping it up, man. He's ripping it up. I don't want to make this about Muhammad, but just you just struck a nerve here. He's ripping it up, man. He's having a successful career over there. I think he just moved into the starting spot, running back spot, the number one spot a few weeks ago. So again, I think he's actually doing exactly what I thought he would do. Again, don't want to make this about Jamani Muhammad, but again, you mentioned him, Harlem in the same breath. So I just wanted to add that. But go ahead.
Oh, hey, you can mention Muhammad all you want. He's a fantastic player, great runner. Absolutely. I believe he got in the starting lineup about 2-3 weeks ago because it came across my feed somewhere and I saw that. So, if he comes back, or I'm sure he has conversations with some of those kids on what it takes to get to the next level and really push yourself to be good. And that's why you want to have kids like North does with Ben Booker. Ben's going to play at Air Force. Eric Roman, he's probably going to play somewhere. I know he got an offer from a school in Minnesota there to play. Those kids, they come back and they continue to be leaders and developers of your program.
Right. Yeah. I think Harlem's in good shape for 2026. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about take a few minutes to talk about before Coach Beck joins us here shortly. Let's talk a little bit about the Belvidere North game. Belvidere North in a great game. We both were there on the sideline. And it just what an awesome high school game we witnessed. Last Friday night, Belvidere North beat Kaneland 30-25. Definitely a nail biter. In my opinion, a barn burn. I think you would agree. What are some of the things that you were impressed with North last Friday night?
The way that they answered in that third quarter after Kaneland ran for the 75-yard touchdown, they scored 3 touchdowns in a row. That is the way to be a dominant football program, not just the team in 2025, but as a program. That's a program standard there where you're answering the call when you are down to look. If you don't score, you're probably going to get knocked out. But that team rose up and they answered the bell every single time. 3 straight drives, they scored touchdown. You see Bucci here. Ben Booker scored. Eric Roman scored. All the big players for North scored. They answered that big touchdown run that Kaneland had, and that what won them the football game was the way that they reacted and the way that they stood up and said, "We're not done on this season. We want to continue on." Kaneland had a great game plan, and they did what they had to get ahead. But when North, locked in and they were ready to go, I'm sure Coach Beck, I'm excited to hear about what he talked to the team about at halftime.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, just to cap on what you're saying, they were down 10-3 at halftime. They come back out second half. Obviously we were there again. Kaneland comes out, smacks Belvidere North in the mouth first. I believe their quarterback busted up the right sideline for about 60 or 70 yards. And the stadium got quiet. And I think we were talking about that on the sideline. We couldn't believe how quiet the North crowd was. We know how important that crowd is to their success. And once North got the ball back, here comes Booker. Boom, he busts one. So again, they were able to close that deficit. And actually, if you look at the numbers, Belvidere North outscored Kaneland 27-15 in the second half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what they did. So whatever adjustments. The adjustments they made at halftime, it came. They did what they had to do, and then that defense, Coach Fagan, they were able to start to shut down some things, especially I think through the air a little bit more. They got Carter under control, the Kaneland quarterback, who he really impressed me. He's much better than what I thought he would be. Carter was a very, very nice player for them. I thought he ran their offense really well. But in the second half, North keyed on him. They figured some things out after that long touchdown early in the third quarter, and they really slowed that powerful running game for Kaneland down.
Yeah, and I think what we witnessed Friday night with Belvidere North, I think we witnessed a team that went through a little adversity in the first half, came out second half, Kaneland scored, so they were still dealing with some adversity. How do I overcome? What they got tested, Harold, and I like that they got tested because again, when they go over to Cary-Grove this weekend, they're going to be tested again, and we're going to really be able to see. How good Belvidere North is. Do I think Belvidere North's a damn good football team? Absolutely, I do. There's no question. But I think what they have on their side right now is they've been able to show themselves, and the coaching staff's got to feel really warm about this. Our team, second round. We know how to handle a little adversity. I think every coach wants to know that their team can handle adversity. Because again, there's going to be times in games where you're gonna face some adverse experiences, and I need to know that all guys that are out there on that field that are playing, or all 32 guys on the team, no matter if you're a second team guy or first team guy, we all can actually band together and we can actually beat adversity. And I think that's what Belvidere North learned about themselves on Friday night.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the other impressive things, at least for me, as I was standing on the sidelines, I was looking over at their sideline. Nobody seemed panicked. They were all calm. They knew what they had to do. After Ben scored, he was sitting on the bench, talking with one of his teammates. There was nobody screaming and yelling or jumping up and down. They knew what they had to do to get back in that game. And the leaders on that football team, they stepped up. And Coach Beck, being the main leader on that part of the football organization there, he was calm. They all talked. They figured things out. They knew what they had to do. They just had to execute. And that's what they did in the second half. They executed really well. And that was an impressive performance in that second half. It really was.
I would have to agree. I would have to agree.
Again, if you were at that game in the first half, if you're a Belvidere North fan, you were a little skittish at halftime. And then right out of the locker room, Kaneland scores another touchdown. You're like, hey, what's going on here? But then I'm so impressed with the way that they answered the bell after that touchdown.
Well, Harold, I think what we witnessed, obviously we witnessed a championship team. This is what championship teams do. Yes, you go out, you win the Nick 10, your conference champs. Again, this is the DNA of Belvidere North. They're a winning program. They won 9 games this year. They won the Nick 10. They're sitting at 11-0. I believe that's a school record. So again, you look at what they've been able to do all year. Harold, score points, make good defensive stops, overcome some adversity. That's a DNA. That's the type of DNA I like of a football program. Again, overcome adversity. We can do that. We've proven that. We put points up on the board. We can score on anybody in the country. Thirdly, we play damn good defense. We play damn good defense. We make stops when we need to make stops. We don't give up a lot of big plays. And I think you saw that Friday night. Did they give up big plays? Yes, they gave up big plays, but they didn't give up many.
Yeah, I mean, Roman defensively, he was just phenomenal in that second half.
He's an animal. He was an animal. He was an animal.
You can see why earlier, we talked about, before we came on about, the all-state performers for Belvidere North. Obviously, Ben Bucher, running back, Eric Roman on defense, both all-state performers at the 5A level. You can see why. Both are tremendous performers, but Roman in that second half, I mean, he was a man on fire.
Right.
And, just great effort by him, great leadership, running exactly through the hole to get there, able to shut down Carter and Kaneland in that football game. And the ability to bounce back. And we have to remember this too. North really, after the Guilford game, I mean, I guess they were pushed a little bit in the Hononegah game. I wouldn't say they were pushed all that much when they played Harlem. They didn't have a lot of opportunities this year where they were pushed in the Nick 10 season.
Right.
And I think the way that they reacted is, as you mentioned, part of the DNA of the Belvidere North program.
Part of it. Absolutely.
You're not going to get that in practice this deep into the playoffs. If it's not set way back in July and June,
right,
and really from the youth programs all the way up, it's just part of the DNA program for Belvidere North, and they answered the bell.
We always say, there's a saying that some people have said it in the past, and I'll mention here in just a second. But a lot of people talk about how the conference doesn't prepare certain teams in the upper echelon teams for the playoffs. And I think what Belvidere North is doing, they're debunking that. I think what you're seeing is a damn good football team in Belvidere North, irrespective of the conference that they come from, the Nick 10. And you see a lot of teams. You don't see the parity as you see in the Catholic League, and in some of the other leagues over there in the Chicagoland area. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I think Belvidere North is debunking that. Nick 10 teams, not all Nick 10 teams can prepare those upper echelon teams, the Belvidere Norths, The Hononigas have been in the conversation. The Boylans have been in the conversation. The Guilfords are now in the conversation. Those teams that are actually at the bottom, do they really benefit us in terms of, really setting us up to have a really good deep playoff run? And I think, again, Belvidere North is really, they're debunking that. Would you agree?
I think for Belvidere North, I think they are debunking that thought process. I can't agree with top to bottom for the conference, but I think Belvidere North for themselves are definitely debunking that. I just look over
that's what I'm saying, Earl. I'm not saying the Hononigas did it, or I'm just saying Belvidere North. I think Belvidere North for the last 2 years, I think they've done it the best. I think they've done it the best.
Well, yeah, they've gotten to the quarterfinals 2 years in a row, so they're
absolutely.
one of
that means something. That means that these coaches are preparing these kids for these types of deep runs, irrespective of the conference that you're in.
Yeah, I mean, look, Coach Beck's got his team, rolling over there, understands how to kind of prepare them for a deep run in the playoffs. They work hard, they train hard, they do mindset training. I'm sure of it, that they do mindset training and talk to the kids about things like that. I mean, every time we've talked with either Ben Bucher or Eric Roman or really anybody with that Belvidere North staff, they all show leadership traits that is something that I think a lot of adults could use to understand how you need to act and what you need to do in certain situations like that. I know after last week's game, as Drew was getting ready to do interviews with Bucher and Roman, Ben was over there. He was talking with his family and talking to a couple other folks, and some random people that I assume he knew were running over there, and he handled himself like a leader. He shook their hands, look at all the pictures. And Eric Roman, he was just waiting until Ben was done to do the interview with Drew. Right. And just the way they handle themselves and the things that they do is a reflection of that entire DNA program over there at Belvidere North.
Well, yeah, for sure. And Coach Beck always alludes to those guys, how blessed he is, so to speak, to have such great senior leadership. And I think that means a lot at this juncture in their season as they prepare for Cary-Grove this weekend, because again, now you have, you got Bucher and Roman who've actually they've had a taste of the playoffs. Bucci's had a taste of the playoffs last year. Williams has had a taste of the playoffs. Alexander has had a taste of playoffs. So he's got some leadership, so to speak, that he can lean on, so to speak, to where he doesn't have to actually do any type of rah-rah speeches before a game. He's got leaders. When you have that type of leadership in your locker room, it just magnifies the room. And I think that's what we're seeing in Belvidere North. I think we're seeing not just those men that I just mentioned as leaders, but I think we're seeing other guys step up and become a leader as well. And I think that speaks testament to the coaching staff over there at Belvidere North.
Yeah, it really does. And, you hear it all the time, and I agree with it. The best teams are led by the players, not by the coaches. Coaches are just kind of giving you a little direction here and there, but the leaders actually lead the football team. And at Belvidere North, the last couple of years, they've been led by the players, and they continue to be led by the players as they're again in the third round of the IHSA 5A IHSA football playoffs. They take on Cary-Grove on Friday night. Looks like the weather is going to be nice for that one too. Weather is going to be mid-50s, clear skies. Maybe we'll still see some of those northern lights that have been popping up in the last couple of weeks. That'll be cool.
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting though to see the response of Belvidere North this week as they travel over to Cary-Grove, and we're going to get more into that here in just a second. But it's going to be really interesting. Harold, as I look at what Belvidere North has been able to accomplish this past season, it's been nothing short of sensational. They've been a treat all year. They've been able to, again, they've faced some adversity. Look at the Hononiga game. Hononiga almost upset Belvidere North. The first game of the year, Guilford almost beats North. They've just really shown really who they are, as a team. And again, it just speaks volumes to how they prepare, It speaks volumes to their kids. How their kids just they buy in, and I think that's what you need in order to actually have a championship program. I think you need that buy-in from your players. I think we've seen that now for years from Coach Beck over there at Belvidere North. I think he's set the tone, so to speak, and I think those kids just follow his lead, and I think that's why we're witnessing such a great season that we're actually witnessing right now. I mean, 11 games, Harold. 11 games is really hard to win. It's difficult. Okay. And I'm speaking from experience, it's difficult. And when you get into the IHSA playoffs, as I'm going to speak from experience here for a second, you play teams that sometimes you never even heard of them. Okay, yeah, they're in the state of Illinois, but there's teams that you may have never heard of, but you still have to prepare. Coaches still have to prepare you to be able to go out, compete with anybody, irrespective of if you see them throughout the year or not. And I think right now, Belvidere North is probably one of the teams that really does that really, really damn good, in preparing these kids for, competition outside of the Nick 10, understanding that, irrespective of who we play, we got to be at our best.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I saw some of their players in the offseason there. They'll go over to some camps and do some training a little bit closer to the, downtown Chicago area. So they compete at that. And a lot of their players compete in other sports as well. They have multi-sport athletes that have gone a long way in the postseason for either track or basketball or, soccer. I don't want to say soccer, but any of the spring sports, baseball. So they do compete on that level as well, where they will play against other teams and other schools that you may not have heard of. Cary-Grove is the school that I think most people have heard of. They're tremendously successful over the years here, and obviously two schools matched up last year, and Cary-Grove was able to get the victory on Belvidere North's home field, 42-7, and I'm quite sure that they've talked about it this week at practice, and they'll continue to talk about it because it's something you want to remind yourself about. I don't think Coach Beck needs to do a lot of that, though. With this team, I think they're a smart enough team that they are locked in. They are ready to answer the bell on Friday night at 7:00.
Yeah,
when they kick the ball off.
I would agree. I would definitely agree with you. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think I guess that was my next question. What are some of the keys to their success on Friday night? And we've kind of hit on it here and there over the last few minutes. But I think some of their keys to their victory Friday night, Harold, is just really going to be, execution, man, on both sides of the ball. They're going to have to come up big. Run stop defense is going to have to show up like never before. This team that they're playing, Cary-Grove, big backs, big old linemen. They're not quick, they're not fast, but they're big. And they're pretty formidable, and they like to put their weight on you, so to speak. So I think the keys to their success, Belvidere North, that is, I think they're just going to have to play lights out. I think that they're going to have to play like they never had before. This has to be their best game. They can't play like they did last week against Kaneland, because if they come out and they play like they did against Kaneland, against a really damn good football team as Cary-Grove, it's going to be a long night for Belvidere North. And I think these seniors want to continue to play on and potentially reach the state game. But as it pertains to what they need to do on both sides of the ball, offense, keep doing what you're doing. Let's figure out how to do it better, as I always say. They may have to lean on Bucci. The ground game may be taken away, not completely, but maybe, 60 or 70% of what you're accustomed to doing on the ground may be taken away. If that's the case, you're going to have to be able to lean on Bucci and Alexander and some other guys that are actually in that passing tree to come up big in that offensive passing game for Belvidere North. Is defense, again, kind of alluded to it just a second ago. I think that front defensive line is going to those run stoppers are going to have to come up big. Those linebackers are going to have to come up big because, just watching film on Cary-Grove the other day. You know, their backs, they're particularly their fullback. This big boy can get to the next level. He can get to that second, third level. And when he gets in open field, again, he's not fast. It's not a speed, so to speak, that Belvidere North is not accustomed to seeing week in and week out. I think that's a bonus. If you look at the speed amongst both teams, Belvidere North and Cary-Grove, you got to give the nod, big time nod to Belvidere North. So again, Belvidere North in that realm, exceptional. Where I'm concerned for Belvidere North is, can their smaller guys, particularly on the offensive line and the defensive line, can they get around defensive line? Can they get around, those big bodies? Are they quick enough to get around those big bodies? And then secondly, as it pertains to the offensive line, can those smaller offensive linemen, can they sustain blocks? How well they can sustain blocks. I think it's going to be pivotal, to their performance on Friday night. And special teams, again, special teams, they got to play well on special teams. It'd be nice to see, I know a couple weeks ago Williams returned one big. It'd be nice to see him, return one big, on Friday night as they go over to Cary-Grove. So again, a lot of factors are going to play into whether or not they get a W. But I think if they can do it, that's the fashion that they need to actually do it in, Harold. Yeah,
I think number one key for me is actually Belvidere North getting off to a better start. Last week they struggled. First round playoff game, they played really well early in that football game. Last week, Cary-Grove outscored St. Pat's 27-0 in the opening quarter. That included 3 turnovers. You can't let Cary-Grove get out to that sort of start, because you're not going to be able to come back. This is not Kaneland. This is a different beast. This is a different team. Right. Kaneland is a fine football program, but Cary-Grove is a state level power. You got to be able to answer the call early in that one. Both teams run very similar offenses, where they like to keep the ball on the ground most of the time. They'll throw the ball. They'll sprinkle it in here and there, but they like to keep the ball on the ground. As you mentioned, Cary-Grove doesn't have the speed of Belvidere North, but they do have the power. They have an all-state running back who's 6'3", 230. He's being looked at by everyone from Illinois to the University of Arizona. I mean, he's a really good football player, multi-sport athlete there. If you go to the game on Friday night, he's number 40. You can't miss him. He will get a bulk of their carries.
Logan Abrams is his name. Logan Abrams. Yeah, I got a chance to watch their game against St. Pat's and didn't mean to interrupt you here, but you just mentioned his name, so I'm just going to go ahead and just follow up. This kid, he's a big boy. He's a straight line guy. He doesn't he doesn't do anything fancy, so to speak, when he gets the ball in open field. Very, very daunting to bring down. And I think what Belvidere North defense is going to have to do at that point of attack, particularly that defense at that interior front, they're going to have to get push right away. They're going to have to get push to slow him down, because once he gets any type of momentum, this dude is a giant to try to bring down. Again, he did some really good things against St. Pat's last week as they beat St. Pat's to get into this round here, facing Belvidere North this weekend. But, again, I think what Belvidere North is going to have to do defensively, because this kid's he looks like he's about 6'2", 6'3", big kid, not a lot of motor. He's not that fast, but again, when he picks up full steam, he's hard to bring down.
Yeah, he reminds me of, and I'm not comparing him to Derrick Henry, but like he has a similar type of running style. And what do they always talk about?
He's tall. He's got the stature. Yeah, he's got
make him stop his feet.
Only comparison with Derrick Henry. Again, you're not comparing this young man to Derrick Henry. I'll go ahead and have your back on this one. I think what you're saying is that more so his stature. He's every bit of 6'2", and he's an upright runner. So again, if I'm a defensive coordinator and I'm saying, okay, this guy likes to run upright, what I'm telling my defensive guys, okay, we need to take his legs away. We need to take his legs away. Do not challenge this man up top, because you won't win.
It's always down.
We need to take his legs away, get him on the ground at contact. It can't be allowing him to get, allowing him to spring, bounce off one tackle. No, you got to get this giant. You got to get this giant of a young man to the ground immediately if you want a chance.
And I think if North can do that, they then get in the mind of Cary-Grove early in the season. So Cary-Grove's won 9 in a row. They're 9-2 on the season. Their first 2 losses, 10 set. They scored 7
Prairie
points
Ridge,
in the
Prairie Ridge. Yep, Prairie Ridge.
So first one they lost
right
34-21 to Prairie Ridge, and then game number 2 they lost 10-7 to Central. So early in the season it took them a while to get going. But if you watch, especially the Central game, so I'll Burlington Central, obviously, who just beat Harlem. If you notice what they did, they were able to penetrate and force him left or right, not just straight up the field. So that really cut down on his ability to run straight ahead, which helped them a ton on slowing him down. And that's what I think Belvidere North needs to do. It'll be interesting to see what Coach Fagan and that staff over at Belvidere North, what they come up with. I'm sure they're familiar with him, obviously having played him last year. But if they can get his feet to stop, I think that they have an opportunity to get him down to the ground. As North does as good of a job as any team I've seen of 11 hats on the ball. They all run to the football. They all try to get, hands on the runner. And that's what they're going to need to do in this game.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, again, I think they're going to be prepared. I don't think, there are other teams that prepare great in our league, in the Nick 10 that is, but how Belvidere North prepares, man. Wow. It's pretty impressive. I like what they do. They actually spend time preparing, weeks and weeks at a time preparing for their opponent, even though they may not see that team 2 or 3 weeks from now. I just love how they prepare. And I think, again, looking at Cary-Grove and saying, okay, and then just looking at Belvidere North, it's gonna be a damn good football game. Let me just state that, number one. It's gonna be a football game. And I think also too, what Belvidere North has in their favor, Harold, they have the speed. They can get to the outside. And I think Cary-Grove, they don't want to see Booker. They don't want to see Roman. They don't want to see Bucci. They want to try to contain those guys and prevent those guys from having big runs. But my big question is, can Cary-Grove slow that potent offense of Belvidere North down? Harold, my answer, I'm just going to be frank. I don't think they can do it. Again, just looking at the film that I saw against St. Pat's, I've only seen one game. I can't speak for the entire season, how well they played defensively, but I saw some tendencies that if Belvidere North executes correctly, they can come out and they can capitalize on these things that I picked up on the other night as I watched film against Cary-Grove and St. Pat's.
Yeah, I think one of the other keys is wide receiver blocking or guys on the outside blocking for Belvidere North. If they can allow the edges, Booker, Roman, Bucci, anybody to get to the outside, it's going to come down to Alexander as a wide receiver. He's a great blocking wide receiver. They have many other very good wide receivers that can block. If they can do that, they can get on the edges for sure. Right. You talked about the fact that that's probably going to be a big key to the game. And if they get to the outside, North has the speed to take it the distance or get large chunk plays, 20-yard plus plays.
And Harold, it's just basically, man, it's just going to take a concerted effort, both defense and offense. I mean, both sides of the ball are going to really have to step up big. You're outside your conference now. You're going on. You're in big boy league, so to speak. You're going on.
You're
now.
one of the last.
You're playing. You're playing
one of the last 8.
Yeah.
State.
Right. You're playing powerhouse programs now, and by all means, if you think that you're a powerhouse program, now's your opportunity to prove it. Now's your opportunity to put yourself on the map by going into Cary-Grove and stunning the shit out of Cary-Grove and coming back home and getting ready for that semifinal game.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. I can't wait to watch this game on Friday night. I'm not traveling down there. I'm going to watch it online. But, we talk about having popcorn. I'm going to have popcorn. I'm going to have frozen pizza. I'm going to have an ice cold drink. I'm going to enjoy this game because I think it's going to be a hard hitting. I think it's two teams that play almost they almost mirror each other as to how they play football. And if you like high school football, I promise you, either get down to Cary-Grove and watch his game or find it somewhere online, because this is going to be one of the better – I think this is going to be the best quarterfinal game in 5A for sure. And looking at the other divisions, this is top 3 for sure. I just think the matchups are there. I think everything lines up to be a really hard-hitting, tough football game. You have talented players on both sides. I think North is playing well as they've played maybe since really early in the season. Cary-Grove coming off of, an easy victory, I would say, over St. Patrick's last week. Probably a little overconfident coming into this one, considering what happened last year. I'm very excited about this opportunity for Belvidere North and Coach Beck.
Right. Yeah. They got to take business at the LOS, man. If they want, Booker and Roman to get hot and Bucci get hot, man, they got to take care of their business at the LOS. Again, you look at the size difference, of linemen, offensive line, their defensive line. They have some formidable D linemen in Cary-Grove, but I think where Belvidere North has the advantage, I think, those smaller guys, they move quicker laterally. The big question is, how well are they going to be able to sustain those blocks on Friday night?
Yeah. I mean, that's what's going to come down to, as you mentioned. I like the skill set of Belvidere North against Cary-Grove. It's definitely going to be filled with a lot of big plays from Belvidere North. Can they get enough to get one more point on the board?
Yeah.
I sure hope so. As a Nick 10 fan, I have a rooting interest, in this game for the Nick 10.
Absolutely.
I'm hoping we get to talk to him for another couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel just by, just looking at, just last week's game, Belvidere North beating Kaneland, again, Harold, man, I mean, this team, as I look at them, man, I've seen them play 3 or 4 times this year. And, particularly this game, the Kaneland game last weekend, just to see those guys overcome that adversity, the way they handled themselves, was something very sweet to watch. And I think now they know, look, we can play with anybody in the state. And I think if they carry that attitude over to Cary-Grove on Friday night, I could see Belvidere North coming back home and getting ready for that semifinal next weekend.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if they play like they did in that second half, and they battle, they get the ball to the outside, I think they definitely have an opportunity to score some points and pull off the victory. I know I've heard a couple podcasts along the way. Some people they don't know what Belvidere North's bringing to the table. I'm not saying they're being short-sighted, but I don't think there are a lot of people in the suburbs of Chicago who understand what the Blue Thunder bring to the table and the talent that they got. I think on Friday night, you're going to hear some loud noise coming from Cary, Illinois.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to.
I agree.
It's going to be the Blue Thunder rambling down the field.
Absolutely, man. Harold, we got to keep our foot on the gas. Our guest is here now. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Head coach of Belvidere North Blue Thunder, also Nick 10 champ coach Jeff Beck. Coach, how you doing, man?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good to see you. Thanks for catching up with us. I know your time is limited. We won't keep you long, but again, big congrats, number one, on winning the Nick 10, and also your first 2 playoff victories. Coach, I just want to get right into it and just talk a little bit about last week's game against Kaneland. I really want to discuss, just the adversity, that we saw, the individuals who were there, what we saw, how your team just handled the adversity throughout the entire game. Can you speak to us a little bit about your team's adversity and how proud of you as a head coach and your coaches are of how the kids handle that adversity?
Yeah, absolutely. Our kids, I think, are really mentally tough, and there was not one instance of one of our players turning on each other or turning on a coach just because things weren't going our way. And I think that speaks volumes to our leadership. from our seniors and into our juniors, and really anyone that plays for us. We have sophomore starts on our offensive line, and he's just as much a leader as our senior guys. So I think our kids kept faith in what we do, and we knew, we just didn't play all that well in the first half. We moved the ball really well and couldn't get into the end zone. We missed a field goal. We got inside the 10, then had a penalty that set us back behind the sticks and couldn't convert there. Um, and then we got the field goal second quarter. So we had 3 drives inside the 10-yard line. And even on the field goal, we got sacked to push us back. So we had to attempt that field goal. We got inside the 10 3 times, only got 3 points out of it. So we were moving the ball. Defense was playing tough. They just had a couple big plays in that first half, and then at the beginning of the second half. But like I said, our kids really kept the faith, and we trusted each other, and we talked about that at halftime about dealing with that adversity and just trusting your teammates and your coaches, and our kids did that, and we played really well in the second half.
Yeah, Coach, congratulations on a tremendous season and fantastic football game last weekend. Just what great way to answer you guys. After they come out of the locker room and have that big run, you guys were able to score 3 consecutive touchdowns there. When you look at Cary-Grove, kind of moving on to this week, when you look at Cary-Grove, is it much like the team that you saw last year, or have they changed a lot?
It's still a Cary-Grove team, and that's what I think people need to understand. They lost 2 tight games early in the year to Prairie Ridge, who was undefeated until last weekend, and to Burlington Central, who's still playing. They lost 2 pretty tight games, and then they've won 9 straight. They're a very good football team. I think maybe they're a little less physical than they were last year. I mean, they had some big kids up front on the offensive and defensive lines that could really move as well. They had a really veteran group last year. Their quarterback was a 3-year starter who had a state championship under his belt, as well as some other kids on that team that were juniors on that state championship team. So they got some new starters in certain positions, but they're still really well coached. They're really good at what they do. And it's a Cary-Grove team. It's a team that every year, year in, year out, in 6A or now this year in 5A is right there in the mix at the end of the season, and one of those final 8, one of those final 4, or even final 2 football teams. So it's still a Cary-Grove football team.
Coach, real quick, as you guys prepare for Cary-Grove, you put that victory behind you guys over Kaneland last weekend. How has preparation been this week for you guys? And are you seeing more guys step up? I know you talk all the time. You talk about your senior leadership. Are you seeing more guys kind of step up, so to speak, now actually taking on that leadership role as Booker has, and Roman and Bucci, Alexander, a few other guys have taken on? I mean, what are you seeing from some of your younger guys? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, what I really like about our team is that guys, don't try to do something that's really like not within their role, and that's why I say we got leaders all over the place, because I got guys that'll step up and, get the scout team fired up when they're giving the opposing team look. And that's not a very fun job. You're going against the 1s and 2s on offense or defense, and it's sometimes a thankless job. But we got kids that will get our scout team players fired up, or get our scout team guys organized. So when I say we got leaders, all over the place, that's really what I mean, is just guys accepting their role and doing it to the best of their ability. So, our prep really hasn't been any different. We kind of adopted a little, we call a high-low format this year. And, a typical Monday for us in the past used to be all film work. And we decided to put the pads on this year on Mondays, and then go low Tuesdays, just go out in helmets and kind of debrief from Monday's practice. And then we ramp it back up on Wednesday, knowing that Thursday is going to be our walkthrough low day, and we want to be up on a high day on Friday. So we kind of use that high-low format this year, and we've really liked it. So I think this is a really typical week of prep for us. There's certain things that we're looking at, taking away from them offensively, that we haven't had to play a team like us, who's under center with, double tight and three backs in the backfield. So, our scout team guys are used to giving another team spread looks
Right.
and, trying to, motion and across and stuff like that and running RPOs and screens and stuff like that. So, it's actually the week of prep, for our kids, I think it's probably been a little bit easier because it's more the pace of what we do.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Coach, I was gonna mention that you guys seem to have mirror images of each other. You and Cary-Grove run a lot of similar things offensively and defensively. Do you think that gives either side an advantage as far as strategy wise, since you guys are so similar in that way?
Yeah, like I said, I think that just really from a scout team perspective of we know their offense pretty well, and when we want to run dive, when we want to run zone dive, we know how to block up zone dive, and all we have to do is call it with our terminology rather than hold up the scout card for everyone to see and say, hey, you're going to block this guy, and so it's a little bit easier. But having played each other last year. We've always been familiar with Cary-Grove. Their coaches have actually helped us out a lot as coaches when we first started out in this offense. Clinicking up together and just talking when we see each other at clinics. Coach K, Bruce K, years ago, and then Brad Seberg now have been great to us as a coaching staff of just watching the way a really successful program does things and trying to see what you can kind of take and emulate in your program. So, I think we're pretty familiar with each other, and we've almost met in the playoffs a couple times before last year, but we didn't get the wins in a couple close games that we would have faced Cary-Grove, back in like 22, 23 ish type years. But we got a chance to see him last year, and we got matched up with him again this year. So I think pretty familiar with each other.
Coach, this week I had an opportunity to get my naked eye, watch a little film on Cary-Grove, and I'm just looking at just some of the things that they do offensively. They do run a ton of motion. They try to get defenses to draw you off sides. What are some of the things that you've actually picked out offensively that you think that they do pretty well? I mean, they do a lot of things well, but what in particular do you think defensive wise that you guys are really have to be really good at on Friday night in order to slow them down?
Well, yeah, we do a lot of similar things. Their big plays I think have come more from their quarterback and fullback, quarterback and B-back. Whereas ours have typically been on the perimeter. But Booch, Bucci is kind of got us some big plays from the quarterback position this year. So just kind of I think where their talent is. Logan Abrams for them at their fullback is a 3-year starter for them. So he was part of their last state championship team, and he's 6'3" and 230, 240 pounds and very athletic. So they lean and rely on him a lot offensively but he's pretty talented. He took over for Coach Seberg's son, who was the starting quarterback last year and ran that offense really well. And I don't think they've really missed a beat. They have a sophomore starting quarterback, and he's a little bit bigger and a little bit more physical of a runner, but that quarterback and B-back, is pretty lethal. And then when you start to try to tighten things down and try to take those things away, they have a pretty solid perimeter game with their rocket toss and their pitch plays that they can get the ball out on the perimeter, and they throw a play action pass pretty well. So, we defensively are going to have to be very good, very disciplined, and very, again, discipline on just doing your job every single play. And that's kind of what a lot of teams say about playing an offense like Cary-Grove and like ours, is you got to have that discipline. So, it's something that we've been, really harping on this week.
Coach, so some couple of nice honors for Ben Bucher and Eric Roman named Illinois High School Football Coaches Association All-State. Can you kind of give us your thoughts on them as players in your program as far as their entire high school career. Obviously it's winding down. They're going to hopefully have a couple more games here, but what is it about them that has really allowed your program to level up?
That's a loaded question, man. We'll be here all night.
Yeah, really. I was just about to say I cannot say enough good things about Ben and Eric and the way that they just have led our program. They came in as freshmen, and there was a little bit of buzz around those kids already when they were in our youth football program and in middle school. There was just a little bit of buzz. We had had the opportunity to coach Ben's two older brothers here in our program. So we knew that Ben was the youngest one, and we kind of knew that he was special, and we had heard about Eric Roman for years and kind of what he brought to the table. And you put those two kids with, again, the rest of that senior class, which they have a lot of just really good football players in that class. I think, again, Ben and Eric have kind of headlined that group for years, but Noah Rooney is a heck of a football player. AJ Tauscher is a heck of a football player. Dylan Crawford, Seth Williamson, Antoine Williams, Jackson Johnson. I mean, these guys have been playing together for a while, and I probably have even forgotten some. Cooper Zorowski. It's just a heck of a football class, and Ben and Eric have been the stars of that class, but it's a really solid group. And Ben and Eric are just, again, they're everything really you're looking for as a high school football head coach. They're at things that you ask them to be at. They volunteer. They help out, with kids camps. You ask them to watch film, they watch the film. You ask them to read a game plan and a scouting report, and they do it. And they're prepared. And you add all those qualities. They're both really good students. You add all those qualities together with their God-given, athletic talent. And they're just, a high school football coach's dream, to have guys like that on your football team.
Coach, one last question here. I know we got to let you go here shortly. Again, thanks for your time. But, Harold and I were talking earlier, we alluded to, how important it was, for your crowd, your fans to get involved in the game last week against Kaneland. We know how important they are to your success. You guys have probably some of the best fans in the state of Illinois, hands down. How important is it to you to have a good showing of your crowd Friday night as you guys travel to Cary-Grove? How big is that to you? Did you catch the question, Coach?
Sorry, guys. I can't hear you right now, so I don't know. It's probably me on my phone here, trying to figure out what's going on.
Sorry, he can't hear us. Sorry, viewers. He's a little tech difficulty. He'll be back with us here in a second. But yeah, Harold, let's just go ahead and continue to talk real quick until he gets his volume corrected. But yeah, I think we're going to see a really good game, man. I can't wait. It's going to be a treat. And again, the question I was asking him, how important is it to you as the HC for Belvidere? How is it important to you for that crowd that you guys get at home on Friday nights? How important is that for those people to be at this game on Friday night? And I think I kind of know what he was getting ready to say, but it's going to be interesting to see, allow him to answer it himself. So,
yeah, crowd support, at this level, super important. Obviously, you want to have homes when you're at home. You obviously know you're going to have that support.
Harold, sorry, I'm going to pause you. He's back with us. Sorry, viewers. Coach Beck, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Again, I'm on my phone. I'm on my phone here, so I think I got kicked off the internet there for a second. So sorry about that.
No worries. So my final question was, I know we got to let you go. You got a lot of things going on today as you prepare for Cary-Grove tomorrow night. But my question is, Harold and I were just chatting earlier, and we were just talking about how your crowd plays a major role in your success. And I think you would agree. How important is it to you, and what do you want to say to Belvidere North Nation, so to speak, about coming out and supporting you guys on Friday night? Because again, I've always said that, it's important that fans come out, support these guys, particularly in a moment like this. I mean, you guys get past this round here. I mean, you guys have a good shot of, playing, after Thanksgiving. How important is it to you, and what do you want to say to viewers that may be watching from Belvidere North or may catch this? What do you want to say to them? How important is it for you to get these people out?
Yeah, I mean, first, if we got fans listening, I want to thank them because, I think our home environment and on the road, I think we travel well, but our fans do a great job supporting, our kids and, families, their friends here at school, fellow students do a really good job. I mean, I've been coaching a while now, and one of the memories I'm never going to forget, we had a tough match up there with Harlem in week 9 playing for the conference championship. And, we got that win and the student section came down running out on the field with our kids when they got the conference trophy. So, that's something that I'll never forget. It's just like, I remember just like yesterday, our first time we rang the bell out there at the stadium. We had beaten Belvidere here at home, and it was crazy. Again, the kids came down from the stands and kind of all crowded around the bell, and we rang it for the first time. So, and that was back in 2014. So, just our fans do a great job. They're loud, they're supportive. We travel well, and I just want to thank our fans, and I hope to see them out there at Cary-Grove tomorrow night because it could be a really nice high school football environment over at Cary-Grove with nice weather and everything tomorrow night.
Well, Coach, hey, we won't keep you, man. Again, it's Thursday. You still got to get to practice. A lot of things going on, but hey, man, as always, man, I always tell you, I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. You're definitely having a lot of success, man. I'm definitely proud of you.
I'm really sorry, but I can't hear you again. So
you can't hear us?
I think it's probably my sign to just take off. So,
okay, go ahead.
Thanks
Coach
for having
Beck,
me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, he made
Yeah,
Coach,
really appreciate.
Coach, Coach Beck. Let me get this out of the way here. Coach Beck, if you're watching, the only thing I was going to say, hey man, good luck to you. I like what you're doing over there at Belvidere North. Always continue to do it better, man. Proud of you. You're doing some really good things, man. And good luck this weekend as you guys head over there to Cary-Grove. Good luck, Belvidere North. Go ahead, Harold.
I was going to say, Coach Beck, one of the fine gentlemen in the conference, as you could tell just from our short conversation there, not only is he molding football players, but he's molding young men that are going to go off and do so many great things in this world. And we are very lucky that we've talked to every coach in the Nick 10 over the last couple of years, and they're all great men.
Not everybody, Harold. We haven't talked to everybody. There's a few. There's a couple guys. There's a couple guys I'm still trying to get on. I won't say any names. I'll let the viewers figure that out. But couple guys, come on, sit with me now. Come on, sit with me. Go ahead.
All right, but I've had a chance to meet every one of them, shake their hands, appreciate the times that I've had the chance to meet with them. They're all good men, good family
guys,
people. Raising young men, young folk. They're doing what they need to, and Coach Beck is right in line with that. Sounds like Cary-Grove might be that way too, because obviously if they're willing to share their knowledge with Belvidere North when they were starting their program,
that's a beautiful thing, and I think that's how it should be. I think all coaches should, come together once a year and just pick each other's brains, man. I mean, you're only as good as the person sitting next to you. That's how I view it. That's my philosophy. So, Harold, before we go, real quick, we just want to send a congrats to those athletes that signed early signing yesterday. A lot of the athletes, we don't have all their names, so we won't mention names. We'll just send you a shout out as a collective whole. Congratulations to all those athletes, male and female, who actually signed their letter of intent and early signing yesterday. Congrats.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's quite the accomplishment for you as an athlete and your family as well. We wish you the best of luck. Don't forget to come back when you're done at the collegiate level. We'd love to have you back in the Nick 10 area.
Absolutely. And also too, if any viewers out there, there's something you want us to highlight, have an athlete on, I know this is, primarily a football show, but, in 2026, things are going to be going in a different direction in terms of the sports that we cover. But for the last few seasons, I've just primarily covered football. Hopefully, you guys are out there that are viewers and subscribers. Hopefully you've been liking what we've been actually bringing you guys week in and week out during the football season, and also to this playoff edition that we're bringing you right now. Harold, hey, man, I know you got to get moving. I got to get moving as well. Again, man, it's always a pleasure sitting with you, chatting football, man. And, I think Belvidere North, I think they're going to be up for the challenge this week. Again, good luck, Belvidere North, this weekend. Harold Bone, Rockton Roscoe News, everybody. Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you, Tim. Take care. Talk soon.
Yes, another great show in the books. Harold Bone, Rockton Roscoe News, and Coach Jeff Beck of Belvidere North, Blue Thunder, that are now 11-0 as they take a trip over to Cary-Grove to square off with a powerhouse Cary-Grove on Friday night at 7 p.m. Guys, real quick, make sure, you guys get out, particularly you Belvidere North fans, make sure you guys get out and go support, these young men that are actually going to be taking the field on Friday night. I think it'll be huge, for Belvidere North fans to show up and show out for their Blue Thunder as they take the field against Cary-Grove on Friday night. Also, guys, too, with a lot of things that are going on in the world today, I just want to leave you with just a positive note. Somebody may be going through something today. Sometimes somebody that's maybe has been going through something for a year or 2 years. Talk to somebody. Let them know, how you're feeling, what you're feeling, and hopefully, they can provide you with comfort. I think that's what we need right now. Here in our world, it's a lot of comfort. There's a lot of things that are going on, a lot of negative things. There are also some positive things going on, but I think we're hearing more negative than positive. So the negative right now is overshadowing all the positive. So I just want to leave everybody, just with an inspirational note, and just say, hey, hug your neighbor, hug your sister, hug your mother, hug your father, hug your kids, because you never know what someone's going through. So again, let's just continue to lean on each other. And if you had a rough day today, always know there's tomorrow, and then always know also too, you can always better your best. Guys, have a good night. Appreciate you guys joining me here on the Bailey Pod. Join us next week. Remember, go subscribe, go like on the Bailey Pod. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.